Al-Rahma's English course. Inshallah, I hope that all of you had a wonderful week. Today we are continuing where we left off from Surah Al-Maida from ayah number 48 until ayah number 50. And we'll just start first with the recitation of these verses. If you all would like to open up your Qur'ans and follow along as we recite, starting from ayah number 48, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه من الكتاب ومهيمنا عليه فاحكم بينهم بما أنزل الله ولا تتبع أهواءهم عما جاءك من الحق لكل جعلنا منكم شرعة ومنهاجا ولو شاء الله لجعلكم أمة واحدة ولكن ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم فاستبقوا الخيرات إلى الله مرجعكم جميعا فينبئكم بما كنتم فيه تختلفون وأن يحكم بينهم بما أنزل الله ولا تتبع أهواءهم واحذرهم أن يفتنوك عن بعد ما أنزل الله إليك فإن تولوا فاعلم أنما يريد الله أن يصيبهم ببعض ذنوبهم وإن كثيرا من الناس لفاسقون أفحكم الجاهلية يبغون ومن أحسن من الله حكما لقوم يوقنون. So that is our lesson from ayah number 48 to ayah number 50. Now for the theory part of our class, alhamdulillah, we did finish one of the topics under the topic of mudud. So if you recall the previous classes, we were covering the mad al-tabi'i or mad al-asli. So all of the mudud that we have covered so far come under this distinction. Mad al-tabi'i means the natural mad. It is also known as mad asli. The reason why all of these mudud are under this category is because they are only two harakat. So these are going to be all of the natural mudud that are only two harakat, meaning that there is nothing influencing them that will cause them to be any longer than this. We learned that there was the natural med, which is having an alif, waw, or ya, and the letter before either has the corresponding fatha, dhamma, or kasra. For example, if there was a fatha, the next letter is alif, this will be a two-count med. So if we have qaf with a fatha, and the next letter is alif, it will be a two-count med. Qa. And then if we have dhamma, and the next letter is waw, this will be a two-count med from lu to lu. Now this is a two-count med. And then also for the kasra, if we have the word bi, or the letter b, ba with a kasra, and the next letter is ya, this will be a two-count med tabi'i, bi. Now we are making this a two-count med. So this was mad at-tabi'i. This is going to be just an alif, waw, or ya, followed by either, before that there's going to be either a fatha, dhamma, or kasra, whatever is the corresponding harakat, and this will cause this to be a total of two harakat. So that was the first one that we did, mad tabi'i. We also covered mad sila as-sughra. This is going to be anytime there is the pronoun ha. And then we learned that there is going to be a dhamma or a kasra on this ha, hu or he. It has to come between two voweled letters, and the letter after cannot have a hamza. So if all of these cases are met, then it is going to be lengthened for two harakat. An easy way to spot this is that you will see that after the ha there is a small waw or a small ya. Even if you do not remember this rule, we learned that if you see there is a small waw or a small ya after any letter, you can go ahead and read that for 2 counts. Now for mad sila as-sughra, one of the conditions was that the letter after cannot have a hamza. As we will learn in the coming topic, if there is a hamza after, or if there is a sukoon after, we will learn that separately, then that is going to be a longer med. So this is going to be a 4-count med. So here, the letter after cannot have a hamza, because if the next letter is a hamza, it will be a 4-count med, not a 2-count med. For this one, you will also notice that that small waw or small ya has that sign of med on top. So that squiggly line. So this is going to be mad sila al-kubra. Inshallah, we will cover this later on when we start the next topic. But just a small reminder that if you do see that small waw or that small ya, you can use this as an indication that there is meant to be a med here. So even if you do not remember the rules of mad sila as-sughra, and there were quite a few, we went over the grammatical meaning as well. And then of course there are these 3 conditions. If you do not remember this, you don't remember the exceptions either, it's okay, because then you will see that there is that waw or that small ya, and then you can know that this is going to be a med. And then in one of the cases as well, there's an exception where all of the rules are met, but there is no med. And in this case as well, if you look in the Quran, you will see that there is no little letter, there is no waw or ya there. So then even if you don't remember the rule, you know that it is not lengthened because you don't see that sign of med. So this was mad sila as-sughra. Example of this, wa ummihi wa abi. So here ummihi and his mother. This is going to be ha with a kasra. I see that there is a small ya afterwards inside of the text of the Quran. So I know that this is going to be a 2-count med. Wa ummihi wa abi. So I will pull this for 2 counts only. Innahu ala raji'ihi laqadir. Innahu, this is going to be a 2-count mad sila as-sughra. And I see that there is that small waw after the ha, so I already know this will be a 2-count med. Innahu, 2-count. Ala raji'ihi, here as well there is that ha with a kasra, and afterwards there is going to be a small ya, so I know this is going to be a 2-count med. Raji'ihi laqadir. So you see that this is a 2-count med. Maluhu, and his wealth. Here there is a little waw after the ha, so I know this is a 2-count med. Maluhu wa ma kasab. So this is going to be another 2-count med, mad sila as-sughra. And then there were a few exceptions as well. So the first exception was in Surah Zumar, ayah number 7. يَرْضَهُ لَكُمْ. So in this condition, all of the 3 conditions are met. Of mad sila as-sughra, the 3 conditions we learned, dhamma and kasra coming between 2 voweled letters, it is not followed by hamza. So all of these conditions are met, but you will not lengthen it. So this is not going to be yardahu lakum. You will not lengthen this. Yardahu lakum. This will only be 1-count med. Now, if you don't remember this ayah, you don't remember what number it was, what surah it was in, then you already know that in the text of the Quran, if there is no sign of med, you do not have to read this med. And in this case, there is no waw after the ha. So there is no indication that this is meant to be lengthened. So if you don't see any sign of med, then you do not have to read that med. So here you already know it will only be 1 count. You don't have to read it as a 2-count med because there is no waw or ya indicating that this is a 2-count med. So this was the first exception. If you would like, you can flip to this surah in the Quran and then highlight it or write it down. You can write exception to mad sila, and then you can circle or highlight the specific word or the specific letter where this med is supposed to occur or where it does not occur, just for your own information if you would like to do that. So again, this is Surah Zumar, ayah number 7. Surah Zumar, ayah number 7. And then the second exception, all of the conditions of mad sila are not present, but it is still going to be lengthened. So we learned that the letter before and the letter after has to have a haraka. It cannot be a sukoon. But in Surah Al-Furqan, ayah number 69, there is a verse, وَيَخْلُدْ فِيهِ مُهَانًا. And then here this ha is going to be lengthened, even though the letter before has a sukoon. So normally, if this letter, the letter before has to have a harakat. So if it does not have a harakat, it cannot be mad sila, but in this case, this is an exception, and you will count this for 2 counts. وَيَخْلُدْ فِيهِ مُهَانًا. Fihi is going to be a 2-count mad. Again, you will see there is that small ya, so this is an indication that this is meant to be a 2-count mad. And then the third example in the word hadihi, normally hadihi is not a pronoun. So ha is not a pronoun here. Remember, it has to be a ha dhamir. But hadihi is not a pronoun, but it is still going to follow the rules of mad sila. So for example, hadihi bida'atuna. Now this is going to be a 2-count mad, and you will see that there is that small ya that is indicating this is meant to be a 2-count mad. So for all of these exceptions, even if you don't remember the rules, again, if you see a waw or you see a ya, go ahead and lengthen. And if you do not see a waw or ya, then you do not have to lengthen this. And then the last one that we covered, we did this in the last class, mad al-iwad. This is going to be in the case of stopping on a tanween of fatha, and it is changed to an alif mad. So for example, if we have fathatain, we have 2 fathas, a tanween of 2 fathas, and we decide to stop on this word, then instead of reading it as a sukoon, we will read this as mad al-iwad, a substitute mad, meaning that we will lengthen this for 2 harakat. And this is something that should be familiar to us by now. A lot of the surahs, especially in Surah An-Nisa, the surah that we just covered, almost every ayah ended in this mad al-iwad. So for example, if we have the word aliman, this is a tanween of fatha, there are 2 fathas here, aliman, and if I decide to stop on this word, I will say alima, and I will read this as a 2-count mad. Ahadan, ahada, ma'an, ma'a, du'a'an, du'a'a. So this is going to be mad al-iwad. Now this only works for fathatain. If we have 2 kasras or 2 dhammas, we have ahadun, ahadin. And if we are stopping here, we will just read it as a sukoon. So if it's ahadin, ahad, ahadun, ahad, ahadan, ahada. So only for the fathatain, we will read this as a mad al-iwad or a 2-count mad. Now in most cases, not every case, you will see that there is an alif after this fatha tanween. So for example, if you see the word ahadan written in the Quran, there is the da with the 2 fathas, and then you will see that there is an alif afterwards. So this is also a reminder that if you are stopping here, you can read this as a 2-count mad. And again, this only works for tanween of fatha. If you have kasratain, dhammatain, 2 kasras or 2 dhammas, you will not read this as a mad. You will just simply give it a sukoon and then leave it at that. Now there is an exception to this rule, and this is going to be the case of stopping on tanween of fatha that is on a ta marbuta. So when there is a ta marbuta is basically that it's like a ha, but it has 2 dots on top. This is ta marbuta. You read this as the letter ta, but when you are stopping on this with fathatain, it has 2 fathas, then you will not read this as a ta marbuta. You will not read it as a mad al-iwad. You will not read this as a 2-count mad. Instead, you will read this as a ha sakina. Okay, an example of this is the term shajaratan. Here there is the ta marbuta and it has 2 fathas on top. Shajaratan. Now if I decide to stop here, I will not read this as shajarata. I will not read this as a 2-count mad. Instead, I will put a sakin on this and turn it into a ha. Shajarah. Okay? Shajaratan. Shajarah. And then I will make sure to give it a little bit of hams. We want to read this from the middle of the throat, or from the bottom of the throat actually. So we will give this a little bit of air to make sure that we are not dropping this letter. So instead of saying washajara, I will give it some hams, washajara. And you can hear that there's that air coming, and we are giving this letter hams so that it is not dropped and that it is not inaudible as well. Okay, another example, jannatan. I will not recite this as jannata. I will recite this as Jannah. And then I will read this with ha at the end with a sukun. So this is one exception to this rule, that if we are stopping on fathatain of ta' marbuta, there is a ta' marbuta with 2 fathas on it, I will not read this with mad al-iwad. Instead, I will read this with a ha sakina. Okay, like shajaratan, shajara, jannatan, jannah. And I will not read this with an alif mad. Okay, so this was all of the mududs that came under the category of mad asli or mad tabi'i. Okay, so for mad asli and mad tabi'i, it is going to be either the natural mad, qalu ya Musa. So this is going to be all of the mudud that naturally are 2 counts, alif, waw, or ya, followed or coming before a fatha, dhamma, or kasra, mad asli. Also mad al-iwad, which we just covered, mad sila as-sughra. So the reason why all of these are grouped together is because they are all 2 count mads. All of these mudud are going to be 2 counts. You will not lengthen them for 2 counts. Now, if you lengthen them for more than 2 counts, and there are some type of med that you will notice have that sign of med and you are lengthening it for 4 counts, or 5 counts, or even 6 counts, these mudud are going to be known as mad fari'i. Mad fari'i. Now, mad fari'i are going to be all of the mudud that are longer than 2 counts. They are longer than mad asli. The reason why they are longer is because there is a hamza or a sukun afterwards. So we have a alif mad, waw mad, or ya mad, and the letter after is going to be a hamza or it is going to be a sukun. And this hamza or sukun is going to influence this mad and cause it to be longer than 2 counts. Okay, so you can imagine this as a chart. At the very top, we have the title of the chart, which is mad fari'i. This is the term used for any mad that is longer than 2 counts, mad fari'i. Okay, now from mad fari'i, you can make 2 separate categories. One is going to be bisabab al-hamza, and one is going to be bisabab al-sukun. So for the reason of a hamza, it is going to be long, or it is going to be long because there is a sukun. So either it is going to be for a hamza afterwards that will cause it to be lengthened for 4 or 5 or 6 counts, or the letter after the mad is a sukun, which is going to cause it to be 4, 5, or 6 counts. Okay, so it is just a mad asli, and the letter after is hamza or sukun, which will cause it to be longer than 2 counts. So we have at the top the title fari'i, then we have bisabab al-hamza and bisabab al-sukun, because of the hamza or because of a sukun. And for bisabab al-hamza, we have mad al-muttasil, mad al-munfasil, mad al-sila kubra, or mad al-badal. Okay, we will go over all of these later. And bisabab al-sukun, we have mad lazim, mad arid lil-sukun, and mad lin. Okay, so we will go over all of these as well. So all of these are different types of mad. Because of hamza, in certain cases it will be lengthened, or because of sukun, in certain cases it will be lengthened. Okay, so this is going to be what we're covering for the next few classes. This is going to be all of the types of mad that are going to be longer than 2 counts. Okay, and inshallah we will go more in detail and we will look at all of these types of mad in the next class. Okay, now inshallah, let's go ahead and move on to our verses. Starting from ayah number 8, وَأَنزَلْنَا, this is going to be a 4-count mad. إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ, qaf is heavy, مُصَدِّقًا, صاد is heavy, dal is light, qaf is heavy. لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَمُهَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ. Here when we have a sukun at the ha, make sure you do give it a little bit of air and hams so that it is not dropped. فَحْكُمْ, ha is going to be from the middle of the throat. بَيْنَهُمْ بِمَا, this is a 4-count mad. أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ, name of Allah here is heavy. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ, 4-count mad. عَمَّا جَاءَكَ, 4-count mad. مِنَ الْحَقِّ. So we see here, anytime there is that 4-count mad, this is known as mad fari'i. And you will notice that after that sign of mad, the letter after is always a hamza, or the letter after is always a sukun. Here, bima anzalallah, the mad after hamza. Ahwa'ahum, there is that mad, and after there is a hamza. Ja'aka, there is a mad, and then after there is that hamza. So this hamza is causing that mad to be there. لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً, ra here is going to be light. وَمِنْهَاجًا, Here, this is mad al-iwad. Because we are stopping on a fathatain, 2 fathas, instead of saying وَمِنْهَاج, I will say a 2-count mad. وَمِنْهَاجَ, read this as a 2-count mad. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ, this is going to be a 4-count mad. Name of Allah here is heavy. لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَلَكِنْ لِيَبَلُوَكُمْ فِيمَا, 4-count mad, آتَاكُمْ. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ, Qaf is heavy, Kha is heavy, Ra in this case is heavy. إِلَى اللَّهِ, name of Allah is heavy. مَرْجِعُكُمْ, Ra in this case is heavy. جَمِيعًا فَيُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ فِيهِ تَخْتَلِفُونَ, Kha is going to be heavy. وَأَنَحْكُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ بِمَا, this is a 4-count mad. أنزل Allah, name of Allah here is heavy. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ, 4-count mad. وَاحْذَرْهُمْ, Ra is heavy. أَن يَفْتِنُوكَ عَنْ بَعْدِ مَا, 4-count mad. أنزل Allah, name of Allah is heavy. إِلَيْكَ فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ, name of Allah here is heavy. أَن يُصِيبَهُمْ, Sad is heavy. بِبَعْضِ, Dad is heavy. ذُنُوبِهِمْ وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا, Ra in this case is heavy. مِنَ النَّاسِ لَفَاسِقُونَ, Qaf is heavy. أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ, Gha is heavy here in this case. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ, name of Allah here is heavy. حُكْمًا لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ, Qaf is going to be heavy in qawm and in yuqinun. So that is our lesson for today, 48 to 50. And inshallah in the next class we will go back to the mad fariri. We will learn all of these different categories, go a little bit more in detail about the meaning of mad fariri, what exactly it is, and then we will move on to the mudud that come under this category, inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan kathiran. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدنا علما اللهم فقهنا في الدين اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا ورزقا طيبا اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما آمين يا رب العالمين. Inshallah, we're going to cover ayat 48 to 50 of Surah Al-Maida today. We're going to start off with the word meanings first, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Ayah 48. Wa, and anzalna, we revealed. Anzal, sent down or revealed. Na is the suffix and it's the pronoun and it means we. So we sent down ilay, to, ka, you, meaning Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-kitab, al means the, kitab, book, be, with, al, the, haqq, truth. Musaddiqan, one confirming or verifying, li, for, ma, that which, baina, between, yaday, hands, two hands, he, his. And anything that's between someone's two hands is in front of them, before them, right? So this is a phrase that's used in Arabic to say something that is before someone. So musaddiqan, one confirming, lima, for that which, bayna yadayhi, before it or before him, min, from, al-kitab, the book, wa, and muhaiminan, one guarding or protecting, alay, upon, he, it, fahkum. Hukm is the root word here, hakama, which means to judge. Fa, then or so, uhkum, judge or decide, baina, between, hum, them, be, with, ma, what, anzala, he sent down or he revealed, Allahu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa, and, la, do not, tattabi'a, you follow. Taba'a means to follow. Ta in the beginning means you. So tattabi', you follow. Ahwa'a, desires. Hum, theirs. Amma, on, from. Ma, what. So this is a compound word, and the noon is taken out when we combine the two words on and ma. So on, from, ma, what. Ja'aka, ja'a, it came, ka, to you. Min, from, al-haqq, the truth. Li kullin, li, for. Kullin, all, or every. Ja'alna, ja'al, made. Na, we. Minkum, min, from. Kum, all of you. Shir'atan, a law. Wa, and. Minhaja, a clear way. Wa, and. Law, if. Sha'a, he willed. Allahu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Laja'alakum, the short lam, lam fatha, means surely. Okay, it's not lam alif la, because that would mean not. Lam alif la means not, and lam fatha, the short la without the alif, means definitely or surely. So la, surely. Ja'ala, he made. Kum, all of you. So, and in this case it means la ja'alakum, surely he would have made all of you. Ummatan, a community or a nation, an ummah. Wahida, one or single. Walakin, but. Liyabluwakum, li, so that. Yabluwa, he tests. Kum, all of you. Fi, in. Ma, what. Ataakum, ata, he gave. Kum, all of you. Fastabiqu, fa, so. Istabiqu, you all race or compete. And we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing a lot of people because this command, this verb ends in waw alif. Okay, so he's telling all of us. Fastabiqu, so you all raise. Al-khayrat, al means that, and khair means good. Khayrat is plural, and it means good deeds. Ila, to, only to, because it comes before the word Allah, so only. Towards Allahi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Marji'ukum, raja'a means to return. Marji'u, return. Kum, yours. Jami'an, all together. Fayunabbi'ukum, fa, then. Yunabbi'u, he will clearly explain. Naba'a is the root word, and that means news, special news. Yunabbi'u, he will give special news. He will clearly explain kum, to all of you. So fayunabbi'ukum, then he will make clear to all of you. Bima, be with. Ma, what. Kuntum, kun means to be. So kun, were or are. Tum, all of you. Fi, in, he, it. Takhtalifun, you all differ. Wa, and. An, that. Uhkum, judge or decide. Baina, between. Hum, them. Be, with. Ma, what. Anzala, he sent down or he revealed. Allahu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa, and. La, do not. Tattabi'a, you follow. Taba'a means to follow. Ta in the beginning means you. So tattabi'a, you follow. Ahwa'ahum, ahwa'a, desires. Hum, theirs. Wahdharhum, wa, and. Ihdhar, be cautious or beware. Hum, of them. An, that. Yaftinuka, yaftinu comes from the word fitna. That's the root word here, and fitna means a trial. ya in the beginning tells us this word is in the third person, and this word is actually yaftinuna before we add the suffix ka. Okay, it would have been yaftinuna. They put you in trial. Okay, but we drop the noon fatha in the end and we add the suffix ka to make it mean you. So yaftinuna, yaftinu, they put in trial, ka, you, an, about, or from, ba'di, some, ma, what, anzala, he sent down, or he revealed, Allahu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ilayka, ilay, towards, ka, you. Fa, so, in, if, tawallow, they turned away. Fa'alam, fa, then, i'lam, no, annama, indeed, or not but, yuridu, he wants, Allahu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an, that, yusiba, he reaches, or he afflicts, hum, them. So yusibahum means he reaches them with difficulty, meaning he afflicts them. Bi baladi, because of, baldi, some, dhunubi. This is plural for the word dhanb, which means a sin. So dhunubi, sins, him, theirs, wa, and inna, indeed, kathiran, many, min, from, annasi, the mankind or people, la fasikun, la, short lam fatha, la again, meaning surely. Fasik means somebody who is defiantly disobedient. An una ending makes this word plural. So la fasikun, surely ones who cross the limits, ones who disobey. Do, so the at the beginning of the word fahukma is used to ask a question. Do, fa, then, hukma, judgment, al-jahiliya, al means the, and jahiliya, ignorance, or pre-Islamic era. Yabghuna, they seek. Wa, and man, who, ahsanu, is better. Hasan means good and ahsan means better. Min, then, Allahi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hukman, in judgment. Li qawmin, li for, qawmin, a people or nation, yuqinun, they believe with certainty, or they firmly believe with conviction. Alhamdulillah. Now we're going to start the tafsir of these ayat, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فأنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق, and we revealed to you, O Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this book with the truth. We learned already about the other books that were sent down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Torah and the Injil. So we learned about those two books. Now this book that's mentioned is the Quran, and it was revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the truth. This book is the truth, that's for sure. There's no doubt about that, and that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ. It confirms whatever has remained intact in the scriptures which came before it. This means that the Quran verifies the truth in the Torah and the Injil. Through the Quran, we can figure out which parts of the Torah and Injil were preserved in their original form, that are the truth, and we can tell them apart from other parts that were written afterwards by people. the things that were not sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Since the Quran has been preserved in its original form, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to preserve it till the end of time, we can check to see what parts of the other books are the same as the Quran. And those parts that are the same as the Quran are the truth, because the Quran has never been changed. The other books were changed by people. A lot of things were added to them. So we can confirm through the Quran which parts of the Torah and the Injil are the actual truth, and what parts were changed or added later on by people. If there's anything in those books that goes against what the Quran says, we don't believe that part. That's not the truth. It means that it's been added afterwards by people. But as for the things in those books that are according to the Quran, we confirm that they are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe all the things from their books that the Quran verifies. Okay? As Muslims, we believe everything in their books that is the same as in the Quran. Okay? And the things that are different are the ones we don't believe, because that means they were added by people afterwards, because the Quran is in its original form. So besides either believing in the things that are the same as the Quran and the things that are different from the Quran we don't believe in, there are other things in those books too that are neither the truth nor falsehood. So we remain quiet about them. We can't say that those things are true or false. Okay, we don't know. We do have the permission to quote Israeli narrations also. وَمُهَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ, and it is one that safeguards it. So we have the original version of the book, the Quran, exactly as it was sent. The other books were distorted. They were changed by people. So now that we have the original book, we look towards it and compare to check what parts of the former books are wrong, to see what was added by people to those books. Whatever parts of those books are different from the Quran, we know those parts were either added or changed by people. The Quran is the latest, the complete version from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it helps us figure out all the things that were added to the former books when we compare them to the Quran. That's how it protects the truth, and protects the truth in those books also. The Quran is the criterion for distinguishing the truth from falsehood, and it restores whatever was lost of the former books. For example, the ayah about qisas that says an eye for an eye and an ear for an ear. If it's not in their book anymore, that ayah, the Quran told us in ayah number 45 that this was a part of their book before. Okay? فَاحْكُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. So judge between them according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's revelations. Before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said in ayah number 47, وَلْيَحْكُمْ أَهْلُ الْإِنْجِيلِ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ. And the people who follow the Injil should judge by the law which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down in it. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all the Muslims to judge between people according to the revelations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told to guide by, the laws of the Quran, whenever people went to him for judgment. That's what he had to do. It didn't matter who the people were, Muslims or non-Muslims. He had to judge according to it. The words Anzalallah tell us that the book was revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And before that too, the words Bima Anzalallah were used so many times. So these revelations are surely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After Ikramah radiallahu anhu accepted Islam, when he used to open the Quran to recite it, he used to start crying, and he used to say, "These are the words of my Lord." Subhanallah, he loved the words of the Quran because they were the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Since the Quran was revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah's name is connected to it. It's His words. Subhanallah. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ, and do not yield to their vain desires, O Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أَمَّا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ, diverging from the truth which has come to you. The Quran is the truth, and it has come to you, so do not follow anyone's desires. And of course, this doesn't mean that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was going to follow other people's vain desires. Na'udhu billah. He wouldn't have done that. So why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell him not to do that? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to convey this message to all of us, to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's ummah. So we know as his ummah that we cannot follow other people's desires after the truth has come to us. He told his beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam this, and it applies to all of us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to know this because there are so many times in life when we have to choose between following the truth that contains the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or following what other people want us to do, or following their ways, the things they're attracted to. Even today, Muslims like the way other people do things, even though those things are against the haqq, the truth that has come to us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many Muslims are so much into celebrating Christmas, and they're just so fascinated by it. They bring Christmas trees home and do whatever they can to celebrate, to try to act like the Christians. Even though we already learned in Surah Al-Baqarah that the Christians will never be pleased with you until you follow their ways. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do not follow their vain desires. And that goes for us too. This is a warning for all of us. He is speaking to each one of us, telling us not to follow their ways or to do what they want us to do, which is to just live freely, be free without any rules or any ethics. They do many immoral, indecent things that Islam forbids. Even the way they dress is totally against Islam. It's like living in a godless society, and they want us to be the same way. But just think about it. If we do the same thing as them, why would our end be any different from theirs? Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved the Bani Israel too. They were His people, and they are His beloved Rasul, Musa alayhi salam's ummah. And Musa alayhi salam was Kalimullah. That's the title he had because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually spoke to him. And the Bani Israel are His ummah. So they were very special. He loved them. And because of the things they did, He called them the Maghdubi alayhim. So how can anyone who follows their ways doing the same things they did make that person Allah's beloved. Okay, because those are the things that led to them being called Maghdubi alayhim. So why would we be the beloved people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we're following their ways? It would not lead to blessings and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are included with the people we follow. We become a part of them. So we cannot follow their vain desires. We have the haqq. We have the truth. We all have this book, the Quran, and we are sure that not even a word of it has been changed. In fact, not even a letter has been added or subtracted from it. The Quran is so authentic. So it's a great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have it preserved in its original form with the actual words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can we prefer the ways of other people and try to copy them? It doesn't make sense for us to do that. لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. We have ordained a law and a way of life for each of you, for each ummah. Each ummah was given the sharia, the religious law, and the minhaj, a clear way that taught people how to follow the law, a methodology. That's what minhaj is. Some say that the sharia means the book and the minhaj means the messenger telling people about the book. So for us, the sharia is the Quran and the minhaj is the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave laws for each ummah, and He told them the way to follow those laws. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, He could have made all of you a single nation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have sent Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the time of Adam alayhi salam with the Quran, right at the beginning, and the whole world could have followed the same deen. Of course, the deen from him has always been Islam, but the whole world, everyone, would have been following the rules of the Quran in that case, if he had sent Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the time of Adam alayhi salam, in the beginning. They could have all been one ummah. وَلَكِنْ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا آتَاكُمْ. But He willed otherwise in order to test you in what He has given you. The basic message of Tawheed, or belief in one Allah, has always been the same. But the way they did things was different for each ummah. Like every ummah was prescribed a different number of prayers. Fasting was different for every ummah. And the branches were different from each other in some ways. That was because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to test people. He wanted to test people to see what they would do, if they would follow the next prophet who would come to them or not. Also, to test them to see if they practiced their religion according to the ways that were taught by the prophet who was sent to them, if they would follow him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent different orders and different rules according to the times people were living in, according to their situation. And this law, the Quran, is final. If it was given to people 5,000 years ago, maybe they would not have even understood it, because humans took time to evolve in their intellect and understanding of things. So the final message, the Quran, was sent when people have gotten to a certain stage, like a certain level of understanding. There's so much wisdom in the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did this. If He wanted, He could have made all the people the same from day one. But He tests us. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. Therefore, try to excel one another in good deeds. This is what we should do. Instead of disputing over the differences or picking out faults in others, we should be focused on doing good deeds. We should compete with each other to do good, to try to get ahead. That's a whole different level than someone who just does a good deed at their own pace. We're told to race fast, to try to outdo each other in good deeds. Look towards our companions and try to get even farther ahead of them in good deeds. That's what istibaq means. Instead of just going at our own pace, we should be racing each other, trying to do more than our companions when it comes to good deeds. Try to get ahead. Imagine competing in a race in which people are running. They all try to beat each other. They try to be the fastest, to try to get ahead and beat everyone else. But instead of trying to beat others who are ahead of us, we start looking at people who are far behind us when it comes to deen. And we think we're fine just the way we are, because we think we're better than them. Although we should never compare ourselves to people who are way in the back when it comes to doing good deeds. Look at the ones who are far ahead, who have gotten so far, done so much, and try to compete with them. That's the only way we can speed up and do more ourselves. We can't tell ourselves that we're okay just because we see someone who is way behind us. Allahu Akbar. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught us to look at those who are in a worse situation than ourselves when it comes to worldly life, when it comes to worldly things. That perspective makes us more grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings He has granted us. So we feel like our situation is better than many others, because it makes us realize that we are better off than so many other people when it comes to worldly things. That's how we should look at it. Okay, look at the people who are worse, in a worse situation than us, who are being tested, going through more difficulties than us. Okay, so we can be thankful. But when it comes to deen, when it comes to Islam, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught us to look at people who are better than us. Okay, so we can try and get ahead. When we look at people who are better than ourselves, when it comes to practicing Islam and doing good deeds, that helps us speed up. And that motivates us to try harder and get ahead. Ilallahi marji'ukum jami'a. Ultimately, you all shall return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember that we will all return to Him. فَيُنَبِّئُكُم بِمَا كُنتُمْ فِيهِ تَخْتَلِفُونَ. Then He will show you the truth of those matters in which you dispute. There are so many matters that can't be resolved here in this life. They just can't be. There will always be problems or differences that arise between people, and people will dispute about things. They'll argue, but we have to focus on doing good deeds instead of disputing with others. There are people who will never admit that you're right, no matter what. Okay, even if you prove your point, and you state the haqq, they will not admit that you're right. Okay, even if they are clearly wrong. So there's no need to waste time arguing with them. It's no use. It's good if we use our time to do good deeds instead. Just arguing with others will not get us anywhere. It won't help. One day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make clear the things people were arguing about when we return to Him. So just wait for that time. وَأَنِحْكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. And that, decide between them according to the law which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. This is being emphasized again. And it's a reminder for all of us that we must judge according to the book. We must follow the Quran for guidance. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ. And do not follow their vain desires. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats that because He wants us to know how important it is. He's emphasizing it. He says this to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam here in this ayah. But this is a message for all of us, all the Muslims, that we can't just follow other people, thinking it's okay to do whatever everyone else is doing. We have to follow the rules of the Quran. In that time, they wanted Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be a little bit more flexible and compromise with them. The Jews told him that they would follow him if he listened to them regarding certain matters, or if he judged according to what they wanted about certain things. They said that they would believe that he was the prophet if he did that. But he couldn't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says not to follow their desires. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that they don't follow their deen. And they're mawdoob, meaning they have earned the wrath of Allah. He is really upset with them. He's angry with them. So why would we want to follow them? Because if we do, how can we hope to end up differently or in a different condition than them on the Day of Judgment? وَاحْذَرْهُمْ. And beware of them. Why should we beware of them? Because there are some people who we can't respond to, since they would try to harm us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to be cautious of them. In that time, this was how the Jews were. سَمَّاعُونَ لِلْكَذِبِ, that we studied already, and how they changed the book, the religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to be cautious of them. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Muslims were not capable of making the Jews reform themselves and change their deceptive ways. So they were told to beware of them. There's a lesson for us in all this. When dealing with people who spread evil, you can't win sometimes. You just can't. If you cut off from them, they try to harm you. And if you stay connected to them, they'll harm you then as well, because they're just evil. So we should be careful when dealing with people like that. وَاحْذَرْهُمْ أَنْ يَفْتِنُوكَ. And beware of them, that they put you in trial. Regarding what? بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. About some of that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to you. They would tempt you away from a part of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to you. That's what He warned Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam of, that they may try to influence him. That's how Shaitan does his work. He influences people through others like that, through others who lead them away from deen gradually. This happens when people spend time with them and listen to the things they say. They're influenced. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says not to let your guard down when you're around them. Be careful. Don't listen to everything they say. if we apply this to ourselves, there are people around us too who just aim to lead you away from deen when you want to practice. They create doubts and say things to confuse you about Islam, where you can't even figure out if you're doing the right thing or not. So we should be careful around such people. All throughout our lives, we have to be aware of them. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, then, if they turn away, if they are upset with you and reject your judgment, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُصِيبَهُم بِبَعْضِ ذُنُوبِهِمْ, then know that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wish to scourge them for some of their sins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that if they don't listen to you and they don't accept Islam or follow your religious law or accept what it says or the judgment you give, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to reach them with difficulty. They deserve it because they basically turned away from Him when they did that. And otherwise too, they turned their faces away from Him. So when they turned their faces away, they thought they chose to do it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them do it because He wanted them to be caught up in difficulties, since they did not intend to believe and they tried to mislead other people too. And of course, it was very unfortunate that they had the messenger of Allah around them, but they could not benefit from his presence. They were too busy doing evil things and plotting instead of paying attention to him and learning from him to do things the right way. وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ لَفَاسِقُونَ, and indeed most of the people are transgressors. This isn't just about the Jews. This is a universal thing, that most of the people are sinful. They disobey. They cross the limits. They rebel against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They transgress the limits. They only do what they feel like doing, what they want to do. They say that they don't care about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered them to do. So many of the people are like that. They are fasiqun. They don't want to be dictated about what to do and how to live their lives. They don't want to follow rules about what to eat and what not to eat, what to wear or not, and when to wake up, make wudu and pray. They don't want to do anything that they don't enjoy doing, or anything that requires hard work. They don't want to do it. They just want to follow their desires. They do things when they want, and they don't follow the rules when they don't feel like doing what they're told to. That means they're basically worshipping their nafs, doing what their heart desires. They are not worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't want to listen to anyone's orders. They don't want to hear it. Not even orders that the Quran gives, which are the orders from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We learn from this ayah that the majority of people are transgressors. They cross the limits. So that should not be our criteria for judging if we should do something or not. Just because everyone seems to be doing something does not mean it's right. Don't do things just because everyone else is doing it. The Quran says that the majority of people are fasiqun. So why would we want to follow the majority? We should remember this when we think about doing anything wrong just because everyone around us is doing it. Most of the people disobey, and they do it because they feel like they would be restricted if they followed the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They just want to follow their vain desires. But we should keep in mind that this life is very short. Just obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this short life. Time passes so fast here. Listen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here and please Him. Then He'll grant you whatever your heart desires in your eternal life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you whatever you want in Jannah. And all you're going to have to do there is just say kun, which means be. And it will be. It will happen right away. Whatever you feel like eating or drinking will appear right away. If you want to go somewhere, you'll get there instantly. Whatever you want to do will happen when you want it to, right away. Subhanallah. Jannah is a place where people get everything they desire. Not in this life. This is not the place where people's desires can be fulfilled. This life is a test. In Jannah, all your dreams will come true. Isn't that so nice? That just by obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this short lifespan, people will get whatever they want in Jannah. Everything they want. In their lives that will last forever. Because life there will never end. Doesn't that make sense? That we should work for that life? How we live this life determines if we get to that beautiful place or not. Why would anyone want to do what they want here in this short lifespan to be imprisoned forever in the hereafter? And if we want Jannah there, we don't even have to be imprisoned here to get there in the end. We don't have to go through anything like that. We just have to follow Allah's rules. Only someone who thinks Allah's rules are a burden feel like they're imprisoned when they obey Him here in life. They just want to do what they're not allowed to do. They cross the limits, He said, because they can't tolerate living within the boundaries. But for someone who wants to follow the rules given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone who wants to stay within the limits of Allah, obeying Him is not burdensome. That person does not feel like he's being restricted. They're happy to stay within the boundaries set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they don't think it's a problem. They're happy that way to follow His rules. So we learned that the majority of people are fasiqun. They sin and cross the limits. If we look around in society, we would learn that this is the truth. This is what really happens. There aren't too many people who obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ. Then do they wish to be judged by the laws of ignorance, the pre-Islamic era? This is what they basically mean when they reject the divine law given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks them if they still like the ways of the Jahiliyyah, the judgment of the pre-Islamic time, the time of ignorance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave people Islam. He taught them the ways of doing everything. He gave them the judgment of Islam, the orders of Islam to follow. That's why it was sent. All these orders are from Him. So what do you prefer to follow? What do you like? The ways of ignorance? The un-Islamic ways? This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the people then. And when we think of the Jahiliyyah, we think about the pre-Islamic time only, right? But even today, there is Jahiliyyah around. Anything that is not according to Islam is Jahiliyyah. Anything that contradicts Islam is Jahiliyyah. So we should ask ourselves, do I like to follow others instead of the ways Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed me to follow? And being educated does not mean that someone is not jahil or ignorant. No matter what degree someone has and how educated they may be, they are ignorant if they can't recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they don't recognize His greatness and don't like His rules, they are ignorant. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is surprised by the way they act, and He asks them, do you still like the ways of ignorance? Imagine giving someone something very valuable, but that person doesn't care for it, and they take something useless instead. You would be shocked, right? And you would say, what? You like this over that? Because you would expect them to value what's more valuable, to choose that. So how can we compare man-made laws or man-made ways or judgments that are passed according to human intellect to those of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rules? There's no way a human can think of the best laws compared to the Rabb, the creator, the sustainer, the disposer of all affairs. He is Dhul Jalal. He is Alim, the one with all the knowledge about everything. He is all wise. He has wisdom about everything. He is Khabir. He is all aware. And He is Rahman and Rahim. He is most merciful to you. And He is Al-Wadud. He loves you so much. And He is the one who gave us these rules. How can we think about leaving His rules to follow the ways of the people? People who don't like to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rules in their lives are basically choosing to follow other people. They don't like to follow Islamic laws when it comes to eating, the way they dress, their relationships, and all their matters. But when an order of Islam benefits them, when it's according to their desires, they choose to follow it. If they only do what Islam orders when they like a certain rule, they're worshipping their nafs. They're treating their nafs like God. They do what they like. They're not being servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that case. They're not acting like an abd of Allah would act. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, do they like the judgment of Jahiliyyah? Not having knowledge is Jahiliyyah. And then there are people who have studied all the subjects to seek worldly knowledge, but they are ignorant when it comes to learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rules and implementing them. That is Jahiliyyah too. We should learn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Asma'ul Husna. We should study them, His attributes, His beautiful names, to recognize how great He is. And once we recognize Him, we value the laws He gave because they're from Him. That is why we need to seek knowledge. And then we would be sure, without any doubt, that His laws are the best for us. That's why the next thing mentioned here is وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حُكْمًا. And who is a better judge than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Whose judgment can be better than His? But not everyone would say this. لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. For those who believe in Him with certainty. Only people who firmly believe, who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with certainty, say this. Okay, that nobody can judge better than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they believe and say that my Lord is the one who is all wise. He is the one who protects everything. That's my Lord. He is the one who knows بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. What is in front of them and behind them, and what is above them and below them. He knows everything. Nobody else does. He knows بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ, the secrets of the hearts. He knows those secrets too. Nobody has more ilm or knowledge than Him. Nobody hears better than Him. Nobody sees better than He does. He is all aware of everything. And nobody loves me more than Him. We should remember that. So whose judgment can be better than His? These are things only people who believe with conviction would say. Others refuse to follow His rules. They prefer the ways of the Jahiliyyah, and that is the majority of the people who do that. So we should think about what we would say. Would we say, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حُكْمًا? Meaning, who can be better than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in judgment? Would we say this in all our matters, in all aspects of life? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided something for me. So of course I'm going to accept it. He is the one who will tell me what I have to do and what not to do. I like the judgment He gave because He cares for me and He is my master. Can anyone care about me more than Him? He wants the best for me. So of course I'm going to listen to Him. Sometimes we tell people that nobody can care for them more than us, right? Especially mothers, when we speak to our children, we say, can anyone care for you more than your mother? Can anyone else want the best for you and not your mom? Right? Because we want them to know that whatever we're doing or saying is for their best. But a child may disagree that his or her mother is trying to do what's best for him or her because they don't know. Okay, they don't know the wisdom in whatever she's doing. They're not old enough to understand. They're not wise enough yet. So imagine a young child. He may feel that his mom is not so caring just because she wakes him up early in the morning and gets him ready to send him to school. The child thinks his mom is being cruel, that she tells him to study too afterwards, when he just wants to play games and have fun. But the mother says, can anyone care for you more? She's doing all those things because she wants the best for her child. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us here in the same way. That do they still prefer the ways of ignorance when guidance has come to them? And can anybody be a better judge than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? for those who believe in Him with certainty? That's what He's asking us. He cares for us so much. He is trying to make us realize that nobody can look out for us more than Him. Nobody can make better decisions than Him for us. Why would anyone like the decisions other people make for them compared to the decisions made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? They are best for us. But not everyone understands this. It's not possible for them to understand. But people who firmly believe do understand that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala include us in the people who say this with conviction, confidently, in all their matters. Whenever we hear an order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether we understand it or not, we should say, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حُكْمًا. And who is better in judgment than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If we're able to do that, it means that we are God lovers. If we are not able to say that, we don't truly believe that His decisions are best for us. Because if we do think they're the best, we clearly say that nobody's rules can be better than the rules He gave us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us believe this with certainty, so that we are sure, without any doubt, that we believe this 100%. Only then we can remain steadfast. Even if everyone keeps telling us about other ways of doing things and wants us to do things a different way. Even if they tell us about the trends and about what's in these days, what everyone else is doing, we shouldn't care. It shouldn't matter, because we should say, I'm fine with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided for me. And there's no need to look for other ways to do things. I like the rules Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. That is what people who firmly believe would say. And that is what they believe with all their heart. Allahu Akbar. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala include us with them. Aameen. Ya Rabbal Alameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم آمين يا رب العالمين جزاكم الله خيرا كثيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله